All right, welcome back. So, what if I told you that one of the simplest, most insightful tools for understanding the entire global economy isn't buried in some complex financial report, but it's right there on a fast food menu? Yep, today we're diving into the Big Mac Index.
I know, it sounds a little weird, right? A hamburger telling us about the economy? But honestly, the answer is a lot. Turns out, this one single globally recognized product can give us a surprisingly clear picture of how different currencies stack up against each other.
Okay, so take a look at this because it really lays out the puzzle perfectly. In the US, a Big Mac will set you back about $5.69. But in Paraguay, you can get the exact same burger for just $3.42. So what gives? Why that massive price difference?
And believe it or not, that price gap isn't just some random fun fact. It's actually the key to a really clever tool for wrapping our heads around international markets. This whole thing started way back in 1986. The folks over at The Economist magazine had this light bulb moment. They realized this super common hamburger could be a fun, but also surprisingly insightful way to measure global economics. And just like that, the Big Mac Index was born.
So what is the Big Mac Index, really? Well, at its heart, it's a super simple way to test a pretty famous economic theory. A theory that tries to get at what a currency is actually worth in the real world. Okay, that theory has a bit of a fancy name, purchasing power parity, or PPP for short. But the idea behind it is actually really straightforward. It basically says that in the long run, a dollar should be able to buy the exact same amount of stuff no matter where you are in the world once you do the currency conversion. So if your dollar can buy you a whole lot more in one country than another, that's a little red flag that the exchange rate might be a bit off. Which, of course, brings us to the obvious question, right? Out of everything in the entire world, why a Big Mac? Why not a coffee or a phone or anything else? Well, the choice was actually pretty genius for a few reasons. First, it's a truly global product. You can find it in over 100 countries, and the ingredients are standardized, which is key, because it means you're always comparing apples to apples, or, burgers to burgers. Plus, its price includes all sorts of local costs, like labor and rent, so it gives you this little peek into the local economy. And maybe most important of all, everybody knows what a Big Mac is. It's an instant, recognizable benchmark. Okay, so let's get into the nuts and bolts. How do you actually calculate this thing? You might be thinking it's going to be some complicated formula, but the real beauty of the index is just how simple it is. It's really just a simple three-step process. Step one, you take the price of a Big Mac in whatever country you're looking at, in their local currency. Step two, you convert that price into US dollars using the current exchange rate. And finally, step three, you just compare that new dollar price to what a Big Mac costs right here in the US. That's it. Simple as that. So let's circle back to our example with Paraguay. The US price, that's our benchmark, right? $5.69. The price in Paraguay, once we convert it, is only $3.42. So because you can buy the exact same burger for fewer US dollars in Paraguay, the index tells us that Paraguay's currency, the guarani, is likely undervalued compared to the dollar. And that brings us to the two main takeaways you get from the index, whether a currency is overvalued or undervalued. Now, they might sound a bit technical, but the logic is actually super intuitive. It really just boils down to this. If a Big Mac is cheaper in another country than it is in the US, then that country's currency is considered undervalued. It means your dollar has more purchasing power there. But if the burger is more expensive somewhere else, then that local currency is overvalued, and your dollar just doesn't stretch as far. And that's the whole point of the index, really. It acts as a quick, informal signal. It's like it raises a little flag that says, hey, there might be a disconnect here between what the financial markets say this currency is worth and what it can actually buy you in the real world. Now, you might be thinking this is all just a fun little economic game, right? But this simple tool, which people have nicknamed Burgernomics, actually has some pretty serious uses for professional analysts and investors. Yeah, for real. Professionals will often use it as a sort of first glance tool. It can help flag potential investment opportunities or help a global business figure out its currency risk. You can even use it for a rough comparison of the cost of living. Now, it's not going to replace the super complex financial models, of course, but it gives them a really valuable real-world starting point for their analysis. But of course, let's be real here. As great a guide as the Big Mac Index is, it is definitely not a crystal ball. It's an informal tool, and it has some pretty important limitations you need to know about. For one thing, it doesn't factor in a bunch of local stuff like taxes, government subsidies, or even huge differences in labor costs. And it completely ignores the bigger economic picture, like a country's monetary policy. So at the end of the day, you have to remember, it's a helpful guide, not a scientific instrument. And that really gets to its true strength. The quote here says it all. It's a pedagogical and accessible tool. That's a fancy way of saying it's a great teaching tool. It's an easy way for anyone to start to understand if a currency is, relatively speaking, cheap or expensive. And that right there is the crucial point. The Big Mac Index was never about trying to predict the future or telling you exactly where exchange rates are going to be next week. No, it's all about understanding the present in a simple, tangible way that just about anyone can grasp. So the next time you're traveling, or maybe just see the price of a Big Mac pop up online, take a second look. Because now you know you're not just looking at the price of lunch, you're looking at a fascinating little clue about the entire global economy. So I'll leave you with this. What will that price tell you?